Today we will talk about section 11.5 on the finances involved with home ownership. First, let's talk about some initial expenses when you're thinking about or beginning to buy a home. When you purchase a home, you generally make a down payment and finance the remainder of the purchase price with a loan obtained through a bank or a savings and loan association. The amount of down payment can vary, but it's normally between 10 and 30% of the selling price. The mortgage is the amount that is borrowed to buy the real estate. The amount of the mortgage is the difference between the selling price and the down payment. So to calculate the mortgage, you take the selling price, remove any amount of down payment that you made, and what's left is the mortgage amount. The down payment is generally the largest initial expense in purchasing a home, but there are other expenses associated with the purchase. These payments are due at the closing when the house is finalized for sale, and they're called closing costs. The bank may charge fees for attorneys, credit reports, loan processing, and title searches. There may also be a loan origination fee. This fee is usually expressed in points. But 1 point is just 1% of the mortgage. You can think of the word point as just being percent. Let's do an example involving down payments and closing costs. Suppose the purchase price of a home is $392,000. A down payment of 20% is made. The bank charges $450 in fees plus 2.5 points. Find the total of the down payment and the closing costs. So remember, the down payment is the amount you give up front. It's 20%, so you take 20% of $392,000. 20% is 0.20. When you multiply, you'll find out that the down payment is $78,400. We want to find the down payments and the closing cost. Let's move on to the closing cost by looking at the mortgage amount. The mortgage amount is the selling price minus the down payment. Why do we need the mortgage amount first? Because the closing costs are based on the mortgage amount. So even though they didn't ask for the mortgage amount, we can't find the closing costs without getting the mortgage amount. The selling price is $392,000. We subtract away the down payment, and we find out that the mortgage amount is $313,600. That $313,600 is what the closing costs are based on. And remember, a point just means percent. So we need to take 2.5% of $313,600. 2.5 is 2.5. And if you take 2.5% and change to a decimal, you get 0.025. Multiplying by $313,600, you find the points are $7,840. The only other closing cost mentioned in the problem is the $450 in fees. So the closing costs are the fees plus the points. If you add those two numbers together and then throw in the down payment, adding those numbers together, you get $86,690. So the problem asks for the total of the down payment and the closing cost. We found in the first calculation that the down payment was $78,400. Then we had to calculate the mortgage amount in order to figure the closing cost. The mortgage amount turned out to be $313,600. And then points were 2.5%. So we got 2.5% of the mortgage amount, which came out to be $7,840. And then those fees of $450 were thrown in on top. So the total of the down payment and the closing cost was $78,400, which is the down payment, plus the $7,840, which are the points, and the $450, which were the fees. And if you add all three of those numbers, which is what the problem asks us to do, you get $86,690. Let's talk a little bit more about mortgage. If a bank gives you a mortgage, you're agreeing to pay off the loan in monthly payments. If you fail to make the payments, the bank has the right to foreclose, which means that the bank takes possession of the property and has the right to sell it. There are many types of mortgages, so a lot of terms will differ and sometimes considerably. Some mortgages are adjustable rate mortgages, sometimes called ARMs or ARMs. ARM interest rates are adjusted periodically to closely reflect the current interest rates. In other words, once you sign for a certain rate, it might change based on what's going on in the economy. The mortgage agreement specifies exactly how that interest rate can change. But there are also fixed rate mortgages, or more commonly called conventional mortgages, where both the interest rate and the monthly payment is fixed and it stays the same throughout the whole term of the mortgage. The term of a mortgage can vary. Terms of 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years are the most common. The monthly payment on a mortgage is called the mortgage payment. The amount of the mortgage payment depends on the size of the mortgage, the interest rate, and the term of that loan. The length of the loan is also called the term of the loan. Let's talk a little bit about ongoing expenses. In other words, once you've bought the house, you still have expenses. Besides the mortgage payment, there are other ongoing expenses. Among these are cost of insurance, property tax, utilities, your heat, electricity, and water. City or county services such as schools, recreational and maintenance services, police and fire protection are financed quite often by the revenue from taxes levied on real property or property taxes. So when you're actually paying your mortgage, you also have to look at where you live, because some of these local governments will add taxes to finance these schools and recreational services, your fire and police protection. So that also is going to factor in on how expensive it is to own a home. Property tax is an annual expense that can be paid monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Homeowners with a mortgage must have fire insurance so that lenders can be repaid if it burns down. If that house burns down, the lender will be stuck unless you have insured it. So you're going to be required to have that fire insurance. Let's do an example. Suppose John's monthly mortgage payment is $1,145.60, and he has an annual property tax bill of $1,074. He also has an annual fire insurance premium of $600. Find the total monthly payment for the mortgage, property tax, and fire insurance. In other words, put it all into one sum. So the monthly property tax bill is the annual rate divided by 12, because we were told that the annual property tax was $1,074, but we're looking at monthly payments, so we have to divide it by 12. So if you take $1,074 and divide by 12, you find out that the monthly property tax bill is $89.50. The fire insurance bill is the same way. We were told that the annual fire insurance premium is $600, so if you want to see how much that is each month, you have to divide by 12. So $600 divided by 12 is $50. So the monthly payment is going to be the mortgage payment, which was given to be $1,145.60, plus the monthly property tax bill, which we calculated to be $89.50, plus the monthly fire insurance bill, which we calculated to be $50. And if you add those three together, you get $1,285.10. So although your mortgage payment is under $1,200 a month, by the time you factor in this other stuff, it's closer to $1,300 by the time it's all said and done. How about this one? What do you want to calculate the most we can afford to buy? If we're out shopping for a house, it'd be nice to know what price range you can look in. And this is an example of that. You have saved $18,000 for a down payment on a house. Your bank requires a minimum down payment of 17%. They're going to require you to make at least a 17% down payment. What is the maximum price you can offer for a home in order to have enough money for the down payment, and then round your final answer to 2 decimal places? Well, this is going to require a little bit of algebra, so let's call X the price of the house, because that's what we're looking for. How expensive a house can you actually afford? The bank is going to require you to make a down payment of 17%, so if you can't come up with that 17% down payment, you can't buy that house. It says you saved $18,000, so that means that $18,000 has got to be 17% of the price of the house. that gives you a nice little simple equation. 0.17x is equal to 18,000. If you divide both sides by 0.17, you'll find out that the most expensive house you can afford to buy, given that restriction of a 17% down payment, would be $105,882.35 house. So if you're looking at homes, there's no sense in looking at a home any more expensive than that because you couldn't afford to buy it.